Hey listeners, how are you all? Thank you so much for being our awesome members. There's a lot to come more. Sit tight, be comfy, put your headphones, now let's begin. Vertical lines. It was sundown when he struck. The little boy in him could remember it, so clearly. He bet everyone was either enjoying a walk around the block, or maybe even having dinner with their families. Fathers came home from missions, sitting legs crossed to listen to their children's exaggerated stories of today's classes and trainings with their teams. Mothers sat at the corner knitting, in front of the stove cooking their special meals, with small smiles on their faces for being content in living in this household. Children, parents, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents, distant cousins. Lovers, girlfriends, boyfriends, admirers, wives, and husbands were all there. They were all there at the Uchiha estate to celebrate the full moon. The little boy didn't return until after sundown, accidentally spending more time alone at his shuriken training that his brother promised to help him with, and came running back to the huge front gates of the infamous Uchiha estate. He was always so proud of the biggest and largest around in Konoha, even rivaling the damn Hyugas. He was so proud, the little boy was practically obsessed. He thought his mother might scold him as usual for being late for dinner. His mother can be such a female. What would she know if she never even touched a shuriken? Mothers. His father, oh, wouldn't he be so proud of his second son when he finds out how much stronger he got? How happy he would be once he learns his second son had got all his targets this time. 22 in a row. His new record. From now on, his father would be talking solely and proudly about him. Maybe even more than his brother. The little boy was practically giggling with anticipation. He ran headfirst, with his school bag bouncing heavily against his shoulder and short legs, with a huge grin plastered on his face. He rushed into the gates and he was expecting the glimmering lights of the street lamps to blind him. But where was the blinding? Where were the lights? Where did the smile he had on disappear to? Where is everyone? Sweat beaded at his brow, his white knuckles were painfully stretching across the skin. He whimpered into his pillow. Sasuke woke up sweating and panting, letting the thick goose feather stuffed blankets and thin sheets fall off his shoulders and lean front. He ran his long fingers through his long wet raven bangs over his heating forehead. Luckily, Tom the barkeeper left a pitcher of water and a tall glass on his nightstand. The prodigy quickly took a giant swallow and slipped out of his white t-shirt to let the heat escape his body and welcome arms open to the cool breezes around the room. He sat on the giant canopy bed, burying his face into his trembling hands. His head was hurting and paining. Like veins around his brain was about to explode into a horrifying shower of blood. He dug his finger pads into his scalp and bit back a scream. Not that he wasn't used to the scorching pain that was delivered into his sleep every fucking night of his life since the massacre. It was unexplainable of what was happening right now. Was it just him or did his nightmares begin to end early? And after every time he had this nightmare, he woke up at most crucial parts to take a breather or just cry. Okay, he admits, but now, it was different. Instead he falls into a deep sleep after the break. And kept dreaming about vertical lines. He dreams about vertical lines. What kind of dreams had he been having lately? Normal people might dream about fields of flowers, maybe soaring in the skies. Or even eating a bowl of ramen. Wait, that's just Naruto. He's not even normal, let alone people. But Uchiha Sasuke now dreams about vertical lines. Thick and long black vertical lines that stood up into the blackness and stabbed into the hard colorless ground, lined next to each other in one single straight row, and it went right and left forever. Long gray shadows formed in the splotches of crimson lights and deep red colors. The rest of the world around the vertical gate of lines was black and empty. If he tried singing, which he wouldn't do, ever, no echo would return. In fact, he couldn't even say anything. Mute. It was just an empty atmosphere. Empty. And the only that split up the vast open red area was the line of vertical bars. Bars. Well, the vertical lines did remind him of prison bars. Were those it? Maybe. Knock, knock. He turned his head behind him at the shut door that led to the narrow brown carpeted hallway. Knock, knock. Low and loud knocks banged softly on his door. He got up and unlocked the lock, and opened the door. And standing outside was the pink-haired Kunoichi. "Sakura, it's late," he whispered, a little harassed that he was currently only in his blue boxers. Sakura nodded and tugged tighter on the purple shawl she wore around her shoulders, murmuring, "I heard some voices coming from in here, I wondering if you're alright, that's all." Sasuke shook his head, and lied, "It's nothing, go back to sleep." He was about to close the door on her until Sakura pushed her way into his bedroom. She was totally not all fazed by his nearly naked attire, in fact she was using those green doe eyes of hers to stare straight into his bottomless black ones. She closed the door behind herself and leaned her back against it, breathing slowly. "What's going on, Sasuke?" she whispered, totally not buying his lie. Damn Ibiki, teaching her those stupid techniques in reading emotions. "Nothing, alright, just go back to sleep." Sasuke lowered his eyes, grabbed her arm and ushered her out. Sakura wedged her way back in again. Then the two begun a war of pushing and pulling. "No, I want to know," she muttered, angrily, "you have to tell me." Quote, "No, I don't." "Yes, you do. Go back to sleep." "No, let me in. You're going to wake up that Dobi and the giant. They can't hear us out here, these doors are almost soundproof. Get out of my room." "No Sasuke, you better tell me. Go. I'm not leaving until I get an explanation." The Uchiha boy glared at her but instead of receiving the frightened look she always used to give him, she just glared back. Sasuke had a firm hold onto her wrists and shoved her into the door, closing it immediately. She grimaced at the back-breaking pain and gripped back her muffled scream. He put his lips towards her ear, having a strong clutch on her struggling. Sakura could his warmth against her slender neck. The purple shawl she wore slipped off her arms and landed between their legs. "You don't want to know," Sasuke whispered silently, moving closer, "I don't want anyone to know." She frowned and growled, "I haven't seen you for more than a year. And you still haven't changed one bit, Sasuke." He was quiet for a long while, still holding onto her arms. It was such a silence, you could hear a pin drop. But these two wouldn't be able to hear it at all, since their eyes were boring into each other's and everything they stood for was focused on the other. When looking into his black eyes, unconsciously Sakura began closing hers. "I know," the two words she heard for the night. And the moment before she could blink, she was outside the door. "Ah, what kind of driver are you?" Naruto complained greatly, feeling several bumps on his head. Sakura, body collapsed on top of his, entangling their limbs in a bruising mess. Sasuke growled and stood up again, taking the backs of his companions' collars and pulling them up straight. Hagrid's face was literally yellowy green and looking to hurl. The shinobis held tight on each other and anything else that seemed strong on this crazy contraption. Hagrid made himself a seat on the floor of the bus trying not be nauseated and the chairs flying about and knocking painfully against their calves. Whenever they tried to make their spots on the counters around the glass windows, the half-blind muttering driver would make a dangerous sharp turn and their bodies would fly to the other side of the damn night bus. The ticket boy of the bus with acne problem was not much of help. Just sitting behind the driver's box on his counter with a seat belt and just kept licking the tip of his thumb and flipping the corner of the wizarding newspaper The Daily Prophet. "You shouldn't hold on to that." The ticket boy winced whilst Naruto crashed into Sasuke's back when the blasted driver drove directly towards several children crossing the street and turning abruptly. "Yeah, well, I warned you." And he returned to the article section he was currently reading about some celebrity witch taking some slim fast diet potion to keep up her figure. Hagrid tried explaining to them about necessary transportation. "I'm sorry Tykes, but this is the cheapest and fastest way to be getting at the express." Naruto frowned and Sasuke scowled. "I think I'm going to die before we arrive at the station," Sakura groaned. Feeling hurt and dizzy, Ernie, the bloody driver, made another turn and she was thrown against the window with the boys. The ticket boy looked up and looked at his sundial watch. And barked out the stop, "Train station, England. Train station, England anyone?" Naruto literally peeled his compressed cheek off the glass pane and made it out the door with the rest of the people who needed the stop. Rather quickly, the ticket boy carelessly threw out their luggages and bags, the purple doors closed, and the night bus left without any non-magic folk noticing anything. The shinobis scowled harder and picked up their luggages, and glared dangerously at the gamekeeper. Hagrid laughed nervously, shrugging a little. Let's be goin'." They arrived, pushing 3 carts of their luggages towards the stop of platforms 10 and 9. Hagrid inserted his sausage finger into his breast pocket and took out 3 folded tickets. The 3 teenagers stared oddly at their fares. "What the hell is a platform 9 3/4 S?" Hagrid grinned, and when they made a second chance to look back at the numbers, he disappeared. Wait a minute, Hagrid disappeared. 3 sets of humongous anime eyes popped out of their heads. Hagrid-san, where are you? Inner Sakura, is this some kind of sick joke he's playing on us? Because it ain't funny. Naruto was literally biting his nails off, Sakura was panicking, and Sasuke was thinking up thoughts of murderous things. Oh my Kami-sama, he made Sasuke think. Where the hell is he? Leaving them there like that? Without a goodbye or a sign. Isn't he supposed to say something before leaving them stranded in a fucking smelly train station? And could someone explain what the hell is a platform 9 3/4? Naruto, Sakura, Sasuke, what you 3 doing here? They twisted disbelievingly to find the bushy-haired girl, the redhead, and the 4-eyes guy with the bad hair. They almost hugged them. Almost. Okay, the author lied, they did hug them. Well, 2/3 did. Sakura and Naruto threw themselves on Hermione while Sasuke just nodded nonchalantly to the bewildered boys. Hermione shuffled on her heeled leather shoes and tried balancing the bear hugs the 2 foreigners were giving her out of relief. She was laughing nervously and patted their backs. Nice to see you 2 in a good mood, Ron replied. Smirking, staring interestedly at the 2 release their holds on her. Oh damn it, Hermione, aren't we glad to see you? Sakura said happily, wiping the nervous sweat from her forehead. Yeah, that gigantic jerk left us here. Naruto exclaimed, and you know what? He gave us these weird tickets that said platform 9 3/4, I mean what the hell is that all about? And you know what else? I'm starving. You just ate, Dobby, Sasuke muttered. A tummy growl roused the group. Naruto snickered, well, I'm hungry again. Hermione waved her hands to calm down the tension between the 2 guys. Okay, there's a food cart at the express and I can explain about your fare. Just follow us, alright. She quickly pushed her cart towards the Block O. FA wall that had 2 number stands of 9 and 10 in bold black lettering. When the muggles around weren't paying attention, Hermione gestured Ron to come over. What? Ron asked boringly, glaring at his stupid owl fluttering crazily around his cage. Could you help me demonstrate something for them? Hermione put on a forced smile, trying her best not to shove him over for his lack of civility. Taking the death look as a sign. The redhead nodded grudgingly and positioned himself. He took speed and pushed himself and his cart into the wall. The 3 shinobis took up a cry of panic, just waiting for the painful crash that never came. Then Ron was soon swallowed up by the brick wall and disappeared into another dimension. The brunette grinned and took a chance to look at the open mouth. Gaping the foreigners were having on their faces. Go on, Naruto, it's not going to kill you, she exclaimed, exhort her pushcart away to make room. Harry could easily remember his first experience with platform 9 3/4 S. How astounded he was when several Weasley brothers rode dangerously through the wall and never came out. Naruto stared at her as if she said the words, low fat, and not budging at all. Hurry up, it's almost time for the train to leave, Hermione cried, glancing nervously at the ticking talking clock hung on the ceiling arches. Naruto gave out a, what the hell why not? Expression and tried his best to put on his irresistible foxy grin. He gripped his hands strongly on the handle and shoved his way a little crookedly in an almost straight line, shutting immediately at the suspecting impact. The last thing he heard was Sakura's gasp. He felt his entire body was sucked in, as if he just ran into, well, nothing. The blonde popped open his eyes when he heard the loud whistle. The whistle of the Hogwarts Express. What he saw would have made the Kyuubi no Yuko in him squeal like a little girl. Or a very small, very cute kitten. A puny kitten entrusted with extreme E-power to destroy thousands of villages. What a pet. It was massive red and black train, gigantic white puffs of steam created a like fog that surrounded the tunnel. With huge gold letterings written across the train of Hogwarts Express. About 1,000 kids in cloaks were giving goodbye kisses and hugs to their weeping mothers and proud fathers, luggages were pulled into the small openings. And there were cries of Hogwarts students who were waving out of their wide-open windows in their compartments. While he was gawking, he saw that Ronald boy with the freckles in the distance catcalling him to come over. Hey, you, yeah you, come on. He suddenly was attacked by his mother hugging the daylights out of him. Mum. Not here. There he stood, a stout woman and balding man with flammy red hair that were blossoming him with kisses and scolding him about his untucked shirt tail. If he were to look closer, Naruto had spotted a smaller girl with red hair and freckles hidden behind her mother's cloak. That must have been Ron's family. And just looking at his freckled face, there was cross of embarrassment and sullenness. Kami-sama knows Naruto had better not kill him for being so fucking fortunate. Lucky. Naruto. He twisted around to see his princess, Sakura, with the human ice cube, the bossy know-it-all, and the guy with the bad hair. That was so weird. I almost screamed when you vanished. Sakura laughed, tucking her loose pink behind her ear. Sasuke grunted, for he almost made a noise when his two comrades went through the wall. Hermione tried to make the conversation a little cheerier. See what I mean? Hundreds of things can happen. The blonde grinned and pushed his baggage cart with the crowd towards the train. The little girl with the red hair stared oddly at him for a moment. Well, like everyone else around the train station, was staring at him and his teammates, and began whispering amongst themselves. Check out those three there. How odd. I don't think I've ever seen them around Hogwarts before. Why are they hanging out with Harry? Are they famous too? If so, can we get their autographs? Could they be new students? That's impossible. They look too old to just come in now. Unless there's another tournament. They must be foreign wizards. Really? Wait a minute, the bigger question here is who are they? Yeah, who are they? Who are they? Hermione, Ron, and Harry began to wonder that too. Of course the three didn't really talk about themselves much. At all. Except that Naruto loves ramen, Sasuke doesn't like to socialize. And Sakura didn't get her hair dyed. In the minds of the shinobis when they entered into the Express, this was the beginning of their one true mission. Board meeting with Dumbledore. Okay, Naruto, breathe in. Breathe out. Don't worry. This isn't supposed to be overwhelming. Of course not, Oba-san won't call you at the last moment for an important meeting. Can't be that serious. I mean, she practically treats you like a son. Yeah, right, like she would be if you keep calling her old lady. And she's going to send authority on his foxy ass once she finds out about what happened yesterday. Stop it. Think of something else. Ramen, delicious ramen. Okay, screw it, you're too stressed out. Now wipe that drool off your lips. Breathe in, breathe out. Oh, oxygen and carbon dioxide are your friends. And make a note to dump them for better, cooler friends. Oh, and remember to buy stamps. Never mind that. Don't worry, nothing is going to happen. Breathe in, breath out. It's nothing serious. Nothing at all. Stop freaking out, damn it. The blonde was hesitantly walking down the narrow hallway to the board meeting room in the Hokage Tower. He was sweating bullets and he was not ready for the pounding the Hokage might or might not give him. Oh, who is he kidding? She is going to do for the hell of it. He clasped the cold and smooth metal knob, slowly opening the door. Naruto then began hearing a clear low voice of an older man's. Such a powerful voice, it was unlike anything he had ever heard before. The stranger's voice was serious, understanding, and compelling with a tender fatherly tone. Something the Sandaime Hokage had had before. He peeked into the sliver of the open door, to see only a small cut of some man's face and a bony wrinkled hand. The demon vessel began to relax his chakra emitting, and listened into the conversation. The nightingales are moving north, little Tsunade, you should be informed about that. That way the spies you have occupied me with are to be further warned. The nightingales are not a group of people that can be taken lightly. Just 6 months ago we have successfully captured a spy of theirs. But sadly before we were able to make a proper transmit of truth potion, the young fellow had fed himself poisonous tobacco from inside of his cuff link. We were not able to recover more information from him after his suicide. Only that he saluted to his cult leader, the almighty figure, and the future of solace. The boy was no more than 17 years old. So what is this supposed to mean, Dumbledore? He could now distinguish the old lady's voice laced with deep concern and fright. He raised a brow and pressed his left ear closer to the opening. It means our 2 united reinforcements are in for a surprise. What actually stopped a beat of our hearts, little Tsunade, was that this cult was made of non-magic folk. The stranger spoke hesitantly. Civilians, how can simple people, find out about the ways of your people? Tsunade spoke in a smaller voice. I'm not sure, but we have snatched a small piece of information that their smaller group is stationed in Old Turnhaven v. Yaj over the forest of Hogsmeade's further abandoned east side. We have not been able to locate their specific quarters, but we are sure of it that this is more than just a cult. Can they also be a threat to Team 7? Not precisely. But Naruto was not able to hear more when a hard white slap had collided painfully on the top of his head. He was accidentally knocked to the door opening, slamming it quite loudly after the affect. He swore and rubbed his blonde hair to feel a giant anime bruise. He turned to see the man behind the conflict. That hurts, you know. He grinned, his bruise easily vanishing. You were eavesdropping, weren't you, Dobie? A placid voice said. No, I was not. I so do not drop eaves. Naruto grinned wider, holding out his hand. Nice seeing you again, Sasuke Tem. It's been quite a 7 months without the cold bastard, 5 months without the one-eyed pervert, and a year without the princess around. The raven-haired boy stared down at the open hand, took into his, and shook it. He smirked. Uzumaki Naruto had not changed much. His sunshine blonde hair although grow frizzier, bigger, spikier, brighter, and rounder. Naruto's electric blue eyes were more noticeable and they shined like 2 sapphire gems. His skin was tanner from all the training Jiraiya put him through, his face was skinnier without much baby fat, but anyone was able to see his whisker scars on his smooth cheeks. He still had not changed his immature and outlandish personality, but was now able to hold up a confident foxy grin that can brighten up any dark room. He was taller, but a bit shorter than his childhood rival Uchiha Sasuke. He wore his black leaf Hite-8 proudly over his forehead to uphold his mustard-colored bangs. But right now he was still sweatin'. In his heavy black and silver windbreaker over his Chunin vest, his form-fitting orange parachute pants with skin-tight black leggings, and black sandals, from all anticipating the beating he might or might not be getting. Uchiha Sasuke had grown more handsome and heart-throbbing than ever, and half of the female population prowling at his feet. His raven bangs hung at the sides of his pale face with grace held up his forehead protector, and the rest of his silky hair was haphazardly styled into what Naruto had always teased him about and get smacked on the head for it, a resemblance of the rough tailback of a chicken. His cold onyx orbs were darker than ever, mysterious, and shaped like a hawk's. He was lean and strong with well-developed muscles, a nice body hidden underneath his Chunin vest and black attire. And still the second tallest in Team 7. Even throughout the years as a Leaf Shinobi, after his conquest to power and placed in the League of Orochimaru, and when he came back to his senses, he became a bit more emotional and learned to smile a little. But that didn't stop from being easily annoyed of his fangirls. Anyway, how's training with Enko-san? Is she a bitch? No, she's very experienced in her field. Naruto cracked up, slapping his knee. Yeah, good one, Sasuke Tem. She's as worst as Oba-san, only that the old lady is a lot uglier and, that's hurts. It better have. Now finish that sentence, you baka. Tsunade exclaimed, smacking the blonde again. She had stopped short of her conversation with her guest when she heard the loud door slam, the voices outside, and made use of herself by continuous slapping the eavesdropper. Well, you are old, Naruto cowered himself, running in circles in the hallway with the Godime Hokage, who was swinging her fist. I'm going to kick your skinny ass, Naruto baka. If your hairy wrinkly grandma knee works. Ouch. Morons, Sasuke muttered, folding his arms and just watching the free entertainment. He then heard a cough over his shoulder. The Uchiha prodigy glanced over and smirked. Kakashi, he nodded in acknowledgement. Sasuke, their old teacher, grinned, too. Rning his visible eye to the scene of utmost action. He grimaced when Tsunade jumped on top of Naruto and began giving him giant anime bumps on his head. Hitaki Kakashi was still same old copy ninja, only that he was 30 years old. And not looking over 26. His silver gray hair was still its original form, still wearing his annoying black mask that covered half his face, his slanted hit. A8 concealing over his Sharingan eye. But instead of wearing his Junin clothes as he usually did, he just looked like he got out of bed just dressed in normal black trousers, fingerless gloves, and a worn-out gray shirt over his mask. In his hand was his new Jiraiya Wonder Book, Mischievous Cloud 9, with a blue cover of a pretty angel sitting in a puffy white cloud and just blushing at the sight of a young man who was standing around, confused. After the Godime was finished with the blonde, Naruto completely healed and looked up to see his old sensei. Pervert sensei, you're on time, he cried, grinning. Kakashi coyly scratched his Hite-8 with his index finger, slumped-shouldered in a relaxed posture. I didn't want to be beat up. His eye crinkled in a small smile, gesturing towards Tsunade. Good. The fifth Hokage said affirmatively, glaring at the three men. Where's Sakura? She questioned about her former student. I'm here. Wait up. Came running down, exhausted. Was their pink-haired teammate. It had been 2 years since a lot of people had last seen her, after she had got out of Tsunade's training and taken into Morino Ibiki's ward at the Department of Torture and Interrogation. Many of them were timid in letting an innocent creature into such a dark place under the teaching of the world-famous, world's scariest sadist. The last of Team 7's members and the Hokage were partly surprised that such a face was coming toward them. Haruno Sakura was still beautiful, and let her pink hair grow to her waist, and made a habit of twisting it into a giant bun. Her roseate bangs clung at the sides of her pale feminine face, showing her slightly bigger than average forehead. Her big child green eyes turned remarkably into a pair of lovely emerald doe eyes that shined brighter than jewels, surrounded by fans of long lashes. Her lips were pink and splendidly curved into a big smile. And having dumped that stupid diet of hers when she was 13. She gained a lot more chakra and strength through her training with the 5th and Ibiki, ridding her baby fat, and appeared a lot healthier then. But now since her increasing genjutsu and NTAL training started in the torture department, her eyes were duller and her skin was paler than normal status, and nothing filled her body but muscles and bone. Her bright pink hair had turned light and losing a little of their color quality. Sakura just wore her Chunin vest unzipped to reveal a dark red shinobi shirt, black trousers, bandages around her calves, and black sandals with red straps. She had dismissed the idea of wearing her Hite-8 over her head, and personally sewing the metal plate over a red bandana to wrap around the top of her pink hair. Sakura stopped about 5 feet away from everyone, just glancing nervously at each gawking face. The 4 people were standing stunned, just staring at her. She scratched the back of her head, raising her brow. Don't I get a hug? She asked, chuckling. Naruto was the first to snap out of his reverie and throw open arms around her form, squeezing her tight and lifting her up off the floor. Sakura-chan, I missed you so much. He hugged her harder, turning her face purple. Air, she gasped. Naruto immediately released her from his killer grasp. Sakura shook herself and just gave her own hug for the village idiot. Naruto lightly clasped her back. I missed you so much, Sakura-chan. Naruto piped, nuzzling his nose on her hair. I missed you too. Sakura giggled, and began giving hugs to everyone. Tsunade's hazel eyes were brimmed with tears. And try as she might, she blinked them back in and received the comforting hug her former student gave her. Kakashi would have let out some tears too, and just like the Hokage. He too missed Sakura that much. She was like a daughter he never had. He hugged her back with one hand because his precious book was in the other and watched her retreating form. Sasuke had nothing to say, really. He just stood still when Sakura gave him a small chaste hug. He nodded in greeting when Sakura smiled. Just after a moment when the board of elders arrived, Team 7 settled into their seats at the table. Tsunade stood at the front of the long table, stacking piles of papers and twirling her pen in between her fingers when she was thinking in silence. The 5 elders sat on her right side, looking glum and strict. Shizum sat quietly at the corner on a rickety chair, ready with her pencil on her paper to inspect the meeting. At her feet was the pet pig Tun Tun. Kakashi, who was more engaged in his reading, and his subordinates sat on the Hokage's left side, just watching the filing of papers and the quick signing of the sheets. After a short moment, the eyes immediately shot to twinkling blue orbs of the guest who sat across from Tsunade, having that small smile behind his snow-white beard, and between his nimble fingers was a plastic wrap that concealed some sort of yellow candy. Just looking at the old man reminded the 3 teenagers of a child. A short and squat elder, looking very impatient, narrowed her beady eyes at the Hokage. I hope the meeting would start now. Godime-sama. Some of us have to be at their grandson's school play. Tsunade, who never really liked that old crone, ignored her and continued to sign papers that lay before her. The female elder's lips thinned and shot a glare at Team 7. Naruto, Sakura, and Sasuke blinked, and began to really worry when all 5 elders began glaring deeply at them. Shizum was sweating like ever before, petting behind the ear of Tun Tun for comfort. The guest, at the other side of the table, popped the candy treat into his mouth and smiled satisfying. After a long while, when everything started going downhill, when the things everyone in the room only heard the sounds of scribbling and stapling, and the flipping pages of Kakashi's book. Naruto literally wanted to bite his fingers off when he kept noticing Tsunade shooting looks at him. When the Hokage settled down on her seat, and looked at Naruto, she opened her peach mouth. This meeting is strictly important. It requires the safety of both shinobi and wizarding worlds. Nani? Naruto interrupted with his eyes bloodshot. You mean this meeting isn't about me? Why would the meeting be about you? One of the elders with a mean face shot at him. Of course all elders knew about the thing in Naruto's navel. I meant, as I was saying, I thought we were here to discuss about what happened yesterday. What did happen yesterday? Tsunade asked him, her hazel eyes narrowed in suspicion. Well duh. I thought the meeting was about my behavior, you know. And my punishment. Ero Sennin and I went to a karaoke bar and got so wasted, you should have seen us. At this point the blonde was cracking up. We were so drunk that we accidentally destroyed everything in the club. Luckily we ran away and Ero Sennin took me to the bathhouse to check out some bathing women. You what? Sakura exclaimed, slamming her fist at the side of Naruto's head. I've lost all respect for you, Baka. She punched him again. Inner Sakura. No respect for property and women. Jerk. Naruto, you're dead. The elders began to grimace at the pitiful childish quarrel and look shamed. That's not what we came to this meeting for, Naruto, Tsunade confirmed. Sweat dropping at Team 7's behavior and feeling sorry for Kakashi having to deal with this. But glancing at the book he was reading, she decided not to. It isn't. Naruto scratched the back of his head, raising a brow. But Ero Sennin and we know what you and Jiraiya had done, the old crone said, seething, looking very irritated. We had the Toad Senni pay compensation to the manager and the Hokage that already punished him for such an intolerant behavior. And as for you, young man, her croaky voice was laced with anger, you have better settle down and act civil before the tyrant of the power rested in me will bestow upon you faster than you can say your own name twice, and I swear. Kaharu-san, you're making a scene, an elder at her right whispered. The old woman named Kaharu snarled and sat down. Naruto was struggling not to break out and lash at her with all his power because she stared at him with those eyes, but instead he sat down and shut up. Sakura placed her hand over his comfortingly and Sasuke stared quietly at the dobi. Tsunade, who was still quiet, continued on with the meeting. As I was saying, this meeting is CTLY important and it requires the help of both shinobi and wizarding worlds so the united powers would be able to overrun the pathway that Orochimaru had long taken. This is my honored guest, Tsunade raised up with her curled hand, gesturing towards the old man, who came here from Britain to speak to me about important factors in which the upcoming mission would be held. Everyone's eyes shifted towards the old man. When the guest stood up, he stood up tall. He had a good height, with a lean complexion, and his image reminded many of them of Father Time. His sweeping snow-white beard was long and thick. His eyes were twinkling blue, half-moon spectacles on his crooked nose, and he wore long trailing plum robes with silver crescent moons and stars. He stood up over everyone, and nodded towards each acquitted attendant in the room. He smiled. "Thank you, little Tsunade, for a lovely greeting." The Hokage nodded respectfully. "My name is Albus Dumbledore, and I am the headmaster of Hogwarts Academy of Witchcraft and Wizardry. I am also the founder of the second running Society of the Order of the Phoenix. I came here on necessary basis to discuss with the 5th Hokage, the Board of Elders, and chosen Team 7 of the Hidden Leaf Village. Many might not know, but the 3rd Hokage was a close friend of mine." "You knew Sandaime Hokage?" Naruto interrupted yet again. His heart was beating quicker. About 1,000,000 questions ran in his mind. Who is this old man? What is his purpose in Konoha? Why is Team 7 reunited again? What is this mission? The 5 elders frowned, perfectly knowing who this stranger is now. They were one of the oldest in the village, and chosen as elders was a high honor, and they come to know a lot of things that weren't known to the public. They gruffly shuffled in their seats, not wanting to be in this place. Kakashi's eye crinkled. He too knows Dumbledore. Of course I remember him. He's a very special foreign friend of Sarutobi-sama. Sasuke raised a brow, looking suspiciously at this man. Something's up. Yes, very well, Dumbledore murmured, just remembering the old times. He looked up with the twinkle in his blue eyes and smiled like a grandfather would. It was 16 years ago, on October the 30th, when the vicious fox demon rampaged through the Fire Country, killing many of villages and fellow shinobi, and only to be defeated by the Yondaime Hokage. The famous Yellow Flash. It was then that remarkable young man managed to seal the demon in a navel of a newborn child that goes by the name of Uzumaki Naruto. Yes, we know that. Elder Kaharu whispered, shooting a glare at the blonde sitting across the table. Naruto was struck down stunned, and he fidgeted to his very bones when she looked at him with those deadly eyes. Sakura and Sasuke narrowed their eyes at the old lady. Dumbledore looked sympathetically at the boy, and continued on, "As I saying, I wanted to tell you that something had also happened during that time. It happened 16 years ago, on October the 30th, when a dark wizard forcefully barged into a house at Godric's Hollow and exterminated a man and a woman by the names of James and Lily Potter. When the wizard approached their child, ready to kill, something had happened." "What happened to the baby, sir?" Sakura asked quietly. "Nothing, that's the thing. Nothing happened to the baby. Actually living a normal life as a teenager back where I live. The boy lived, which was absolutely amazing, because when the dark wizard emits killer intent, he's not going to let things down easily. Instead, the boy survived only with a scar on his forehead that is shaped like a thunderbolt, and the dark wizard vanished and lost all his power there." Naruto shook his head, exclaiming, "How can a baby defend himself against a killer?" "Because of love," Dumbledore whispered in a soft and strong voice. Everyone was quiet and still in their seats. Kakashi stopped reading, even Shizune stopped scribbling notes on her clipboard and looked up. Only Tsunade smirked. Love," Naruto murmured. He scratched his head. "I don't understand. How can love protect him?" "It just does, Naruto," Kakashi whispered, closing his book. Dumbledore nodded. "Yes, when his mother, Lily, died, she did so to protect her child, and it created a strong old magic barrier to block out the evildoer from killing the baby. The spell the dark wizard cast backfired on him and destroying the very being of his great power, and only leaving the thunderbolt scar on the baby's forehead." Wait a minute. Are you speaking in code, old man?" Naruto was literally shouting. What the hell is a wizard spell, or old magic barriers? And precisely how is this story supposed to mean anything? And who exactly are you? Naruto, Sakura said, scolding. Don't be rude. No, Sakura-chan, I'm not. The blonde slammed his fist on the tabletop. I just want to know, who is this joke? I mean, is he even the third Hokage's friend? Where were you in our lives? What happens if he's a fraud? How can he prove to us what this bedtime story would be useful for? And what makes him think he can openly talk tea? Oh me about the Kyuubi no Yuko in my navel. Don't I get enough crap from the villagers? Naruto, shut up. Sakura cried, shaking his arm. Sasuke appeared to be very irritated. Stop it, Naruto, Kakashi said warningly. No, what society is he talking about anyway? Some cult. Some lunatic asylum he's from. Why should he concern us? Just then, Tsunade slammed her hands on the table, nearly breaking it and shaking everyone up. She grabbed the front of Naruto's windbreaker and lifted him off the floor. Because Konoha is endangered. The entire shinobi world is. This is not about you. Don't you dare be saying things you don't know jack shit about. Now sit your ass down. Her hazel brown eyes were red and bloodshot. She glared dangerously at Naruto, emitting vast amounts of chakra from her pores. She easily released her grip on his black jacket, making Naruto hit the floor on his bottom. Hokage-sama, the elders stuttered. Everyone was tense and stunned for a moment, just staring from Godime Hokage to Uzumaki Naruto. Vice versa. The two blondes glared back and forth. Build-up of office mishaps. It was complete and utterly awkward quiet. There wasn't much of a silence they have ever experienced. No one was saying anything, no one was doing anything, and nobody wanted to do something. It was so tranquil that the entire thing sunk deep into their skins and tangled their bones into painful knots. They struggled themselves not to move an inch, as if one movement would plunder the world and everything in the meeting room except on the exception of Shizune, who was shaking s. Oh bad that her pen fell out of her trembling fingers and hitting on the head of the pig by on her side. Right now, right there, Honey Hazel bore into electric blue. Hokage, Mr. Uzumaki, I think we shish. Old continue our meeting, Dumbledore murmured strongly towards the two. Tsunade nodded and settled down in her leather chair while Naruto staggered back to his. I know something would happen. I just knew it, Elder Kaharu scoffed, putting on a gruff face, but inside she was happily living off this fight. The Hokage stared at the foolish woman with furrowed brows and hot ash eyes. Shizune chuckled nervously, getting up her seat and started to walk frantically from her corner to the refreshment stand at the other side of the room. This wasn't very surprising since she always acted this way. Whenever her mentor Tsunade would go ballistic and do something stupid, soon everyone's eyes were on her. Shizune was shivering with embarrassment as she was waiting for the hot water to boil. Kaharu fluttered her bony fingers on the table edge and crossing her nimble feet coyly, she ran her right hand over her ear to brush invisible gray strands and looked from the Hokage to Team 7 to Dumbledore, then tilted her head to her colleagues. She spoke in a professional voice, as if asking rhetorically for everyone in the room to hear. It's just a question out of the blue. Kaharu waved her left hand in circles in midair cockily, catching everyone's attention. Of course, but why do you, I ask, had the idea of choosing the old Team 7? I'm sure there are other qualified shinobis that are willing to take on this mission. What do you mean Team 7 isn't qualified? Naruto sprang up shouting, angrily. This time no one bothered to shut him up. The words Kaharu were saying were fighting words. It's not an insult. Kaharu blinked with false surprise, patting her chest softly. I'm just saying that there are many other ninja teams willing to do this mission, whatever it may be. Of course, anyone could have chosen a more suitable team made up of members who had been familiar with each other for a certain amount of months. But we've been a team since Sakura-chan, Sasuke, and I was 12. We did surpass many genins that time in teamwork. Naruto exclaimed, we are willing. But you three have not worked together for about 2 years. How would Team 7 gradual? Why cooperate with each other after so long? The old woman asked, silently listening to her male elders who were whispering amongst themselves in agreement. I can't quite wonder how the village would think if they sent an innocent girl. An ex-missing nin, a man who reads adult novels, and a troublemaker. And on such an important foreign mission, how would that classify the hidden leaf? There was a knife behind the female elder's smile. Sakura furrowed her brows, her inner self taking over. Pardon. Is that what you think of us, ma'am? Because the entire village doesn't seem to care about this mission. They don't care about our inexperience or the stupid fact that we're still minors or that we had not worked together for 2 years. And they also don't care what kinds of people we're buying. G sent as long as the mission is accomplished. Well said, Sakura-chan. Naruto grinned, elbowing her. Kaharu narrowed her black eyes, twisting her smile into a snarling frown. I know what I'm saying, girl. Minors cannot do this kind of mission, it's too dangerous. Are you accusing me of doing a terrible job of being a Hokage? Tsunade asked agitatedly, her hands curled into tight fists. Are you accusing me of being inadequate with my decisions? Are you accusing the way I put up with the village, the way I do my best to help with Konoha? Are you not satisfied that Team 7 will be doing this mission even if your hypocritical words are being thrown at them or me? I'm quite content with your decision, Hokage, Elder Kaharu whispered deadly. I'm just a little disappointed that you have not asked the Council Board of Elders to make this decision also. Oh really? I apologize. Tsunade smirked, knowingly, but are you sure the board is just upset because I didn't ask you to decide? The elder's eyes widened and she frowned most unhappily. Oh, Tsunade-sama. The poor medic nin began freaking out, unstacking paper cups on the counter and fumbling with the plastic bag. Remember, you have to keep your temper in order. I don't have a temper, the fifth smiled, leaning into her chair relaxingly. She was just enjoying the way Kaharu was bracing herself from not launching at her. Of course you don't, Oba-san, Naruto whispered sarcastically that the woman didn't catch. Shizune began quickly pouring hot herbal tea into 11 cups, squealing softly to herself when she spilled a little. Her behavior started out just like her young pupil Hyuga Hinata, stuttering and blushing embarrassingly. That was quite a start on the BB beginning D Dumbledore-sama. She was jumpy when she tried to excuse her old mentor's sly conducting. Shizune's entire face flushed deep red when she accidentally snorted between her laughing. She clapped one hand over her mouth, kicking Tun-Tun to the side so she could serve the tea. Excellent jump on the speech. Oh no, and the hot liquid fell on the table from the constant quivering and the puddle escaped on one of the male elders. Shizune gasped and quickly began to mop up the mess and repeatedly apologizing while the old balding man scowled and shaking his robe off the steaming spill. Sakura, stop embarrassing yourself, woman. You're not making this any easier, you know that. Sakura looked confusingly at her, getting up from her seat. Shizune-senpai, do you need help? Before the older Kunoichi could reject, Kaharu leaned towards to her fellow elder with her bony wrinkled hand curling around her mouth, whispering rather cruelly, obviously. And that had really twisted Tsunade's suppressed anger. She already hated the council lady, and she didn't want her older pupil to take this crappy treatment from this despicable woman and the tremendously stupid old males. Kaharu had no right to take out her boredom on the girl and acting as if she was the Lady Hokage herself. She slammed her hands on the table, shooting nasty heated glares at the old woman with her then white teeth clenched from underneath her peach lips. Out. Get out. Go. I have enough this nonsense. I don't know what's sticking up your ass, but this is enough. Everyone's eyes bulged out of their sockets. But then, no one could really blame the Hokage for blowing up and speaking in such a manner. Dumbledore looked calmly at the raging woman while Kakashi didn't seem to mind, if not amused. Tsunade-sama, this isn't. Shut up, Shizune. And stop calling me Sama, damn it. The Board of Elders is not required at this moment. I'll just send the damn papers over to your offices to sign. You can still actually go to your grandson's play. Tsunade may have been telling all 5 of the heads to scoot, but everyone knew she was directing her argument to the old crone. Shizune was hushed, grateful and settled back into her chair with tremendous worry. Kaharu's face was priceless. All the other elders were relieved to get out, intentionally glaring at Naruto and Sakura were practical. Lee giggling with glee just watching the faces of the older villagers. Shizune looked at her watch, and her eyes bulged into twice their size. What's the matter, Shizune Oni-chan? Naruto asked. His electric blue eyes followed her movements when she dashed very sloppily from one place to another trying to clean up the meeting room. I didn't think this meeting would take so long. Kuso. I had to meet Hinata-san for her medic training. I'm half an hour late. Damn it. She accidentally knocked her sandaled foot against her chair leg, quickly grabbing her bag and tugging on Tun-Tun's pearl necklace. I forgot about this little guy's meal too. The little pig oinked with a big smile. She quickly ran to the door, opening the door, and exclaiming into the hallway, "Hinata-san. There you are. Okay." She turned to the rest occupants, "My apologies that I would not be able to record." "Don't worry about it," Tsunade murmured clearly, watching the young woman leave immediately after the second word she had said. Her blazing hazel eyes turned to her right. "I thought I said the board of elders had to leave." "We're leaving," one of the male elders with pockmarks on his face exclaimed irately. The snow-white-bearded old man stood up again, straightening out his purple hat crowned around his head. He bowed respectfully towards the board council when they were exiting the room. He lifted up his eyes to surfacing around the ceiling, smiling softly. It was as if he could see right through the walls, as if he could see beyond any naked eye, and he could see it so clearly. The elders stopped and were awed by this man. They have heard of him in several meetings with the third Hokage many years ago. Of course, having great memory, the elders have never seen this sort of being. It seemed so compassionate, and just one look at this mystical man, you can truly trust him. Though they didn't like to show it, they scrunched up their noses and looked away from the simplicity of his inner power. Only seeing this as a stranger who dared step into the grounds of the Hidden Leaf and unfortunately crossed paths with them. Elder Kaharu frowned deeply when she left last after them, slamming the double doors behind loudly. It was a docile silence again. Sakura was deeply touched by the very presence of Albus Dumbledore. Ibiki had taught her well in noticing fears at first sight. Just look at the cleft of their chins, the curve of their lips, the color of their skin, the cut of their shoulders, the length of their nose, the look of their eyes, and she knew this man possessed more than just fame and glory. He was strong, truly strong. Has it already been an hour and a half? She said to herself thoughtfully. Sasuke blinked. He too wanted to feel the shield emotion the elders were trying to put up. But he could agree that Dumbledore was a wonder. Kakashi had only seen this man once in his life, precisely years before Yondaime was chosen as Hokage, ever since he was a child. He even stopped reading, which is a very big deal in terms of the one-eyed ninja, just to look, just to stare at the appearance of this wise man. Naruto looked from one person to another who was all somewhat paused. For some reason he could not feel the way or express the way he felt about this man. He didn't mean to be mean towards him. He didn't mean to insult him when they first met. It wasn't as though he hated him, it was, just, so, very, unexplainable. He didn't need boundaries around his emotions, but deep within him, he just can't deal with him right now. The blonde looked away and found something on the floor worth staring at. How long has that gum been there? Dumbledore noticed firsthand how Naruto was acting, so he decided to continue on with the meeting. When he was about to talk, he saw that one more person was still here. Oh, Kakashi, I don't think this part of the meeting would require you. Seeing what only he knew, the masked shinobi smiled behind his face cloth and stood up from his chair with his stupid adult novel in his hand. Of course, sir, turning to his old pupils who were gaping at his departure, waving a short wave, I'll see you three around. Wait, why can't Kakashi stay? Naruto complained. I'll escort your teacher out. Tsunade smiled indignantly. I'll be meeting you three in a short while. Have a nice tormenting time with the village idiot, Dumbledore. And poof. The two legendary ninjas of Hidden Leaf disappeared in a short explosion of smoke, and before Naruto could pounce on the Hokage. We're stuck with a stranger. How irresponsible is she? The blonde exclaimed, steam wishing out his ears. He turned his tense sapphire eyes at the client. Explain yourself, old man. Naruto. Sakura whispered in a scolding tone. No, it's all right. I do say I am getting old. Dumbledore laughed richly, a kind of laugh that betrayed his age, whatever it may be. With a look of a grandfather, the stranger ran his hand down his beard pensively. Do you trust me? He asked softly. Naruto raised his mustard-colored brows and stared into the clear blue eyes of Albus Dumbledore's. There was always a sort of pleasant twinkling in this old geezer's youthful orbs, whose eyes were almost like his. Weird. Of course I do, sir, Sakura said serenely, after a moment of analyzing him. Sasuke just nodded. The three sets of curious eyes turned to the blonde, who had yet to answer in his own specific way. After a long while of struggling himself with a slight irritating bend in his stomach, Naruto murmured a very small, yes. This mission, he began, is indeed crucial between the shinobi world and the wizarding world. Dumbledore spoke slowly. It is indeed very important that we have your attention and cons. Tant participation within this assignment. This is of course, a foreign land where the four of you would be working side by side together for 7 months. 7 months. Naruto and Sakura repeated breathlessly, wide-eyed. It can take up to more than a year if the amount of accurate information is not gathered within the minimum time limit. Dumbledore murmured strongly, this is a tracking and spying mission, which means you must collect certain important data of current events happening within the schools. I'm sure the students and teaching staff at Hogwarts wouldn't be so keen with several older adult investigators walking around, especially with the Minister of Magic currently taking a chance to sabotage my standing. Sabotage. Sasuke repeated aggressively, drawing intensity into the word. The pink-haired Kunoichi fingered her black trousers, curiously, in what meaning? Aren't government figures supposed to be reasonable? Unless you did something. No, nothing illegal und. The eyes of those who are open-minded, my dear. It seems that 2 years' set of happenings have triggered an alarm within the ministry, sadly, the old wizard said, his fingertips pressed together. It'll take more than a few long hours to explain, I'm quite sure, but to sum it all up, I am willing to pay a good price of 1 million yen in your participation in this mission. 1 million. Naruto, Sakura, and even Sasuke, screamed, quickly standing up from their leather-cushioned chairs in utter astonishment. It would be enough to supply the hospital and fix the old children's playground. Sakura exclaimed eccentrically. Naruto scratched the front of his forehead protector, thoughtfully, wow, with that much money, it could be given to reconstruct the ninja academy. Wouldn't I like to see Iruka-sensei's face? Yes, I know the money is very important to the Hidden Leaf during this time, Dumbledore chuckled sumptuously. What exactly does this mission require? Sasuke asked sternly, leaning his mouth and chin to his crossed fingers, staring skeptically at the bearded stranger. Uchihas never liked to waste time. I need you to be familiar with my school, the two twinkling blue eyes looked back into Sasuke's onyx eyes carefully. Evil has fallen upon my world and must be stopped. I need you three to protect Hogwarts, along with the staff and students. There are 3 boys who are the subjects of attacks. Here are their profiles, and pictures, too, provided by a charming boy by the name of Colin Creevy, a nice boy indeed. And slipping into his violet cloak, Dumbledore pulled out 3 cream-colored folders and gave each one separately to each teenager. Naruto pulled out several snapshot pictures of a bespectacled boy with the most unkempt mass of point-black hair that even rivaled his sunshine blonde sensation and unhealthy skinny complexion. Dork alert rang in his mind like church bells, making him snort and cover his mouth completely from cracking up. Of course, most of the black and white pictures showed this particular boy with shocked wide eyes and stiffened movements. Movements. The demon vessel boy peered closer into the photos, and there they were. The figures were moving consistently and the boy's hand kept shooting up to block off most of the picture. Light shined and reflected off the round lens of his rimmed glasses. The camera must have moved with slight shaking. And then repeated again with the same boy having an irritated expression. Naruto didn't feel like commenting on the short cinema movements on the pictures. Lookin' on with what felt like 100, and infuriating, shots. Unknown to the boy, Dumbledore read his facial expressions, alongside his teammates, and smiled. Man, this photographer must be annoying, he thought frankly, looking through more of the pictures. After most of the unpleasant snapshots were placed back into the folder, Naruto came across a photograph that was a really good one. The boy sat in what looked like a lounge, surrounded by about 5 other people. The boy looked up to greet the camera and looked back at his friends, laughing and having on a huge smile. A lanky boy with armed hair and many freckles scattered across his face was punching his arm playfully, and the girl with bushy tresses was indulged into reading but waved into the picture. A younger petite girl whose freckled face was hidden by her hair sat on the arm of the chair next to the first girl, and behind the giant couch, was a small mousy boy with short lop of dark hair was nervously laughing and scratching the back of his head. They all looked like they were having a good time. When the Four Eyes ran his hand through his hair, lifting up his short ruffled bangs, on the right side of his forehead how'd a very skinny scar which resembled a thunderbolt. Strange, yet again, Sakura had only 2 pictures of her subject. The first one was a weird black and white picture of a huge grassy coliseum a dozen people in uniform were flying in, what appeared to be, broomsticks. The photographer must have been close to the scene because it caught a good format of a young man with glasses diving in to the ground and made a fast safe upright turn, leaving another boy trailing behind him and accidentally crashing violently into the grass. She winced at the awful impact. Not wanting to see the rep. She placed the photo back into the folder. Next one she looked at was a full-blown format of a young man, probably older than her, had on a confident smirk and neatly combed back hair. He was quite handsome, but his light-colored eyes were fierce and cold like ice, which threw off his good looks. She frowned and looked through more of the contents of the folder. Sasuke looked disgustedly at the third boy. There were only a few of him. Most of the pictures had him with wide shocked eyes and whimpering mouths, confused positions, and some had him tripping on his feet. He had a look of a deer caught in headlights. With short black hair and watery dark eyes. He had round cheeks and his lips were small and parted to show a set of small front teeth that were biting anxiously on his lower flesh. His shoulders were round and slouched, and only in alarm would he straighten up in posture. This was a face of a very sad, pitiful wimp. The last picture he saw was an impressive one even in the Uchiha prodigy's level of the same young man in a combat position with a skinny stick struck outright. A cast of bright colors burst and knocked out another boy with dark skin into the air and land strongly against a mass of assorted cushions. In this snapshot, the boy was no scaredy cat. Right then this boy had the look of a warrior, his eyes looking straight forward with boldness and strength. Sasuke smirked. I need you 3 to especially protect these boys before you, as you can see in the folders, Dumbledore said in a tense voice, their present days are being watched by strangers unknown and dangerous. But most of all, your first priority is this boy, the old wizard pointed to the picture Naruto had in his hand. That is the boy who lived, Dumbledore murmured, the boy who survived a disastrous murder only with a scar on his forehead. His name is Harry Potter, your number 1 client. Restless exhaustion. Who is our enemy? Sakura asked, taking a look at the pictures of Harry. His past name is Tom Marvolo Riddle, but now he goes by Lord Voldemort. Dumbledore leaned closer, whispering secretively, but it's quite safer to call him you-know-who, so it would not be so rude and hazardous in front of my people. Why do we have to call him something else? It's not like we call Orochimaru. Thingy, Naruto scoffed, saying this evil dude's name won't kill us, I'm sure. His teammates shot him warning glares. As respect towards other people's insecurities, I'm afraid, Dumbledore said sadly, I have in the past tried to convince people of the same logic, but it failed numerous times. Before we can exactly get into the mission, how come none of us have ever heard of you or your people? Naruto asked, holding up his fingers in double colon gestures. Albus sighed, moving in his leather chair for a more comfortable seat. I suppose you ought to know about the wizarding world and the shinobi world. Have you ever wondered why your people came to be? When the 3 tykes looked at one another sternly, they simultaneously shook their heads. Dumbledore began. Shinobis are descendants from wizards, but they are so different and so small in groups of people that it's ever so hard to find them. This is why shinobis have chose to be far away from all wizards, though many Japanese wizards still live around the area, in the maps of Muggles and those of the younger generations of wizards and witches. 700 miles of original land is geographically missing. That is the first magical barrier we put up to encircle protection and secrecy, Wick. H are the 2 very strong points of the Shinobis preservation. Wait a moment. Naruto shot his hand in the air. What are Muggles? Dumbledore blinked, replying, Muggles are the term the wizardy world uses to define someone without any magical powers and work by their own sweat and hands instead of depending their entire lives in spells as my people do. Hold up. Sakura piped up, if the shinobis are similar with wizards, are the Muggles like our civilians? You know, the normal villagers who didn't reside in the duties of ninjas. Quite frankly, yes, the old man sat down comfortably on his seat. But the civilians in the 5 countries have to live by what the DNA they are born with. Either to have shinobi blood or the talents of a civilian. Of course not many shinobi born have chosen the path of bloodshed. Quite a shock to the Order of the Phoenix when I tried explaining. Of course, he chuckled, Muggles cannot revert themselves into becoming wizards, so by the blood they have taken from their ancestry. They would have weaker immune systems, weak towards all sorts of disease as one deep cut can easily kill them, limited thinking powers which means they can sink low into propaganda if they are not careful. And they cannot do magic. But in our case, wizards, shinobis, and your civilians are almost impervious to diseases and unlimited givens in cleverness with heightened emotions and senses. And these amazing powers given to us. We wizards have to block out everything about ourselves from muggles as much as possible. Why is that? Well, Mr. Uzumaki, as I had said before, muggles are very malleable. They have lower assessment in thinking than all of us. They are more mysterious than we'll ever be. It's the most interesting way they think and the way they react. They feel the way they feel. The adrenaline that runs in their blood. They cannot cope with the things they know nothing about, and because they are so many more of them than us, terrible thing. Would happen if they were exposed in the wrong sense of way. But I don't get it, Naruto scowled with impatience. Why did shinobis want to avoid the wizards and every other group around? I mean, we can easily mingle with normal folks. Can't we? The old man smiled warmly behind his beard. You want to know why the shinobis are so special from the rest? Well, because you can be physically, emotionally, and mentally strong. Your very small group is very well gifted and so genuinely different. Look at your hair colors and the colors of your eyes. It's not generally the colors of ordinary Japanese. And also what singles you out is the way you look. Touch your cheekbones and the folds of your skin and you'll see what I mean. Look at the way you walk, talk, react, and the sixth sense you seem to have whenever something happens. Your skin is extra sensitive, so you could even predict who the person is behind you without turning around. Your eyes can see farther than any other eye. Why shinobis think is off the charts in terms of intellectuality. You can think faster than everyone. Since the ninjas are such a small group compared with others, you are highly advanced species. I'm not sure. Naruto doesn't come off as intellectual, Sasuke smirked, easily sensing the blonde spouting horns from the top of his head. What differentiates the powers between wizards and shinobis? Sakura asked curiously, trying her best to keep Naruto's struggles from attacking Sasuke. The old man chuckled, expecting someone to ask that question. Shinobis use a concept of molding chakra, which is made up of spiritual powers, emotional powers, and mental powers, to create jutsus and such, mostly used for battle techniques and fighting to protect them defensively and offensively. They can live perfectly without the jutsus, but if their chakra valves are drained, they would suffer long-lasting pain, or death. As I had said before, shinobis have heightened skills in fighting and their speed in physical matters and thinking abilities are amazing, that of geniuses. Wizards, Albus Dumbledore smiled lightly, are very powerful also. But on the other hand are completely defenseless without magic. Which a release of short bursts of their individual chakra. It may take a long while to adapt each spell and magical command master for each wizard. It can easily be controlled with wands. But only through very extreme emotions can they create such magic power beyond imagination. But the strongest weakness is if they lose their wands, would their entire system of magical records, through spells and jinxes, vanish and they become immensely weak. And of course, through the combined powers of both wizards and shinobis, we were able to create a preservation for the shinobis to reside in. How can we believe in magic or wizards? Naruto cried, being a hothead. Can you prove to us? Even though Sakura and Sasuke were upset at their heated teammate for being rude, once again, they were also very curious and eager to see the proof. Dumbledore smiled, most certainly. He pulled out a long skinny dark chestnut brown wand and pointed to the flower pot full of yellow daffodils and blue irises. And whispered in Latin in words that could not be explained or heard clearly. Like an invisible power bursting from his wand, feeling the fast strike of small chakra colliding towards the potted plant. And there, just there, the flower pot was floating a foot off the table surface. Inner Sakura. Holy, that's proof all right. Whoa, marked me, speechless. Any other questions? Dumbledore asked slyly, vanishing his wand into his cloak. He just waited patiently, drinking in the shocked faces of the shinobi tykes. Yeah, what had happened that made the ninjas decided to leave the real world? Naruto mumbled, breaking out of his reverie first. Albus Dumbledore looked modestly at the blonde, fingering his leather armrest with his old nimble fingers. There was a revolution between the wizards and the shinobis many eras ago. The shinobis decided to seclude themselves from the world and have all went to live in preservation of 700 miles of land in Japan. Your peep. Lee's ways were much more different from wizards. Most wizards were entirely scared of the way your ancestors raised their shinobi children, teaching the arts of assassination at such an early age. And it became an all-out argument between the two groups. Of course, when it came to the point of killing, the ministries of magic throughout the world decided to give the large amounts of lands to keep the shinobis isolated from everyone else. I know it's difficult to explain, but to take the secrets from being spread, a mass of memory charms was distributed to wizards and witches around. It happened. For over 150 years ago, when I was only 28. Sakura gaped disbelievingly. YYUC can't be BBHH 100 and SS 70 8 years old. The oldest age recorded and the 5 countries was about 110. I told you I was getting too old, the old wizard chuckled. You're not old, you're ancient, Naruto exclaimed appalled, striking an index finger at him accusingly. Dumbledore laughed softly to himself. Sasuke looked suspiciously at him and murmured, "What's Voldemort have to do with this mission?" Concerning these clients, his onyx eyes I led over the pictures of boys scattered over the table. 2 twinkling orbs placed themselves on the young Chunin sensibly. I thought you'd never asked, Mr. Uchiha, Dumbledore said gently, grinning slightly. I don't like wasting time. Sasuke smirked behind his crossed fingers. Of course, Albus said agreeably, there are a few wizards who have been gifted with great powers and such talents he had that normal wizards dreamt of. And abused it. Tom Riddle was a good boy, he was an excellent student in Hogwarts. One would wonder how it would have been if he didn't live a tragic childhood. I was his transfiguration teacher. If you can believe it. I was not yet a Hogwarts headmaster, but that Tom was a strange one. If I would have taught him better, he might not have become the person he is today. Dumbledore looked almost teary-eyed, and sighed in restless exhaustion. Voldemort is a dangerous figure, a man of sense when it comes down to evil and darkness. A man known as the creature who feeds on fears and intimidation. He has a vast group of followers called the Death Eaters around the world that all bowed to him and dreamed the same future of one race. One race of pure-blooded wizards. And death to all muggles and the so-called traitors of the wizarding blood. He's already miraculously survived the powerful backfired blow of the killing curse he's put on Harry Potter. He sooner came up with numerous ways to live and arise once again, as the Dark Lord Voldemort, ruler of the entire world. There was also another fine fellow, almost the same age as Voldemort, Dumbledore said depressingly, his eyes glazed. Yes, a fine young shinobi, with talents that could have gotten him to become the next Hokage, and it had seemed, Sarutobi, the Sandaime Hokage had taught him very well. Indeed, so well that he prided himself into becoming even more powerful. Is this shinobi Orochimaru? Sakura whispered edgily. Sasuke gripped his fists tightly, almost shaking in rage. Naruto looked at the table. With his electric blue eyes glaring so hard, it could have burned holes. Albus sighed again. Yes, I only met him once in my long lifetime, when he joined the Atasuki group. It was then Sarutobi and I met and discussed future sense. We didn't actually put up the 5 magical barriers until after Orochimaru left the group in search of his fortunes and when Volume Demort created havoc in parts of Europe and West Asia. They both had killed mercifully to get where they were then. Voldemort needed more troops of loyal followers, killed spies, sent death marks into the air, the people were screaming. Families lost, a young girl in Hogwarts lost her uncle, aunt, and many of her cousins. I'm quite sure the Bones families were devastated, as so were many other people. Sarutobi and I, we made a composition. If Orochimaru and Voldemort were to find each other, the world would soon open up more fears and doom that our eyes have not seen, such things never to be spoke. Ken of, do you understand, when I was 28 my father hid me in the family cellar. And I remember the smell of rum and cider, of the smokes from the floating candles which wax was melting on the cold cement. I remembered a blast of light from the tower flew towards my town, as did all towns in the world. I could only remember and remember I did, of shinobis. It was nothing but legends and unspo. Ken children's stories my father once told me, bless his soul. I was wise, even for my age, that I did not open my mouth and talk openly about ninjas of such. Memory charms have already taken over everyone's minds except for a few people I later meet in my life. Do you not understand why 17 years ago, Sarutobi and I put up barriers strong enough to block off the sights of Voldemort and Orochimaru? They can never see each other, for both their worlds are only half around the globe, completely separated of both Europe and Japan, West, East. It was dramatically evolutional, so beyond our dreams. We created old magic barriers. 5, exactly 5. First one was placed in the border line of the 5 countries, which isolated Muggle world from Shinobi. That was skive off Orochimaru's mind from ever hearing about Europe's happenings. When he was raised, he did not know of such things. Mockery of the Shinobi honor, of course, all due respect. The second barrier was placed around Britain, never would Voldemort know of Orochimaru. Vice versa. The third barrier was placed in China, along the Great Wall. It was magnificent, the splendid idea Sarutobi came up with. In the look of his face, the childlike face that possessed the power of 1,000 men, Dumbledore was almost speaking in a language of their ancestors, in words unexplainable. Fourth barrier was my idea, to place it along Turkey towards Ukraine. They would have to face the cold mountains in Russia to get through. Not even flying carpets or even apparition can help. It was ingenious. For nearly a year and a half we planned this and put it into action. He paused in a way that caught the 3 shinobis' breath, stopping their pulse, their heartbeats, and even their souls from moving. Dumbledore laced his fingers onto the wooden table. His lips glided in words of power. Fifth barrier was the most important. His eyes kept twinkling endlessly. Sarutobi and I had to come up with everything to complete this mighty barrier. We have placed it along India's sea border and between Nepal and Bangladesh, crossing into Uzbekistan, then straight into the middle of Kazakhstan, and into Russia in its separation of both Europe and Asia, towards the Arctic Ocean. It was superb. It took us nearly 5 years to complete the 5th barrier. The barrier was miraculous, it was so entirely powerful, and through 17 years, the 5 barriers held up. But now, do you not see that nothing can be immortal, that nothing can hold up forever? Dumbledore smiled sadly, his strong tone dying down in a bliss of regret and exhaustion. 2 barriers were taken down by Orochimaru in 3 years, one was demolished by Voldemort's Death Eaters in a year. There's always a single flaw in my plan that Tom had always found. Only 2 barriers left, you understand. If Voldemort takes down the barrier in Turkey, Orochimaru and him will destroy the 5th barrier together. Do you not see that nothing can be immortal, undefeatable, as it looks? There they stared at him, appalled no less, astounded. They were completely surprised that they never heard of him. The bad feeling in Naruto's stomach would not go away. There they stared at him, lower his face, blinking his blue eyes that were slowly extinguishing its twinkling. And then the great Albus Dumbledore fell into deep rest, covering over his blue eyes with his bony hand. He lived too long, he didn't rest for so long, he's too old, too exhausted, it seems. London Bridge is falling down. Rap for me, rap for the soul of life. Rap for the loved ones. Rap for the soon to be gone. For the soon to come. Rap for me, hun. Things start to change, things to mix, more than the others could have realized. The audience would just need to grasp on this journey, and take in as much as they could when things start to turn over, when things start to come about in a way they never expect. When they got to understand the way of movement, the way of gravity, how everything falls on them. How everything falls together. They have to never forget. They have to love it. They have to grasp it. They have to know what's being expected and what's being unexpected. Sure, take a dare. Take a few breaks in your meaningless life, but run away, please, if you're ever tired. Because you'll only get squashed in the end. Peace, man. A week ago, the stench of blood had tinged the air. The fluttering of the frightened night birds had screamed and flew away. Her hand was drenched with the sin she had now carried with her. But like any sinner, she would worry about her sin later. He watched when his limp body of the driver had fallen against the leather steering wheel with his waxen face and bloodshot eyes behind those sunglasses. Warm shed blood dripped from the front of his black coat. Dead before he had landed, she had noted through lifeless brown orbs of hers. With a gaping mouth of his, she could have seen a stream of silvery white had risen from his parted bloody lips into midair, disappearing. She smiled inwardly, already seeing his soul arise into heaven. Yes, he deserved to be in heaven, live amongst those who are innocent and pure. She grimaced slightly, a sudden shadow had taken over her heart. She winced as she hunched her shoulders, feeling that void in her chest. That feeling she had always hated, always loved. The young maiden dropped the cool dead L.Y. metal of the gun she held in her right hand, making a thud on the dirt ground. She left the car door open, letting flies settle on the gray skin of the poor corpse, and walked fluidly towards the window where a weeping, sobbing infant, awakened by the firearm's shriek, and laid crying. The maiden picked up the small body in her arms and walked towards her destination, far away from the abandoned car and driver. Far away from the life she had always hated with her entire being. She needed a safe route, watching the footprints of her heels carefully. The baby still cried when she entered into the forest by the empty road. She had stride through thick leaves and branches of the trees, until she came to a clearing surrounded by a deep singing river and a strong wooden bridge built over the waters. She smiled, being here for a while. The baby was still weeping. The night, she thought tonight was a beautiful night. The air was supple and moist. For hours she sat by the bridge and river. The young maiden breathed into the wet smells of the forest and running water gliding through the boulders. She smiled softly to herself, that thin grin that graced her dry lips with a peeling skin at the corner. It was cold. The wind had hit across her lean and tall body like blows. Even when it hurt, it did not hurt her. All she felt was this numbing pain that seeped through her chest, making her see. Ow a while and simpered for a glass of water. But no, her maid was not here to care for her. She crawled from out of her seating spot near a soft moss patch after sitting down for a while when the infant was hungry. She popped back on some of her pearl buttons of her modest gray dress, lacing her slender fingers through her light flaxen hair that blew in her face. With the little emperor in her weak limbs, she quickly threw back on her gray coat and tied the attachments carefully. She stood up carefully, her feet felt as though it had pierced her endlessly whenever her heels had clicked against the dry dirt. She felt the trailing long braid of hers drag against the back of her knees through the thick fabric of her woolen cloak. She felt the weight at the back of her head, that long golden braid which she had never cut. All she heard was the baby's little noises and the water of the flowing river. She gently cooed to her baby cradled in her nimble arms, the baby with fair white skin and rosy cheeks spilling with whimpering tears streaming from the lids of his blue eyes. His mouth was wet from his sweet meal, and his skin was slightly sweaty from being so wrapped up in all those rich clothes. He gurgled spittle from his little plump lips. When she leaned in close she breathed into his scent of powder and breast milk. The baby was tired, he was exhausted. The young maiden couldn't admit to that. She lifted part of the flap of the blanket he was hugged in, picking up her boy's little hand she felt as his pure blue eyes of his father's had closed as he fell asleep. She curled her long finger in his small grasping fingers and she felt him tug slightly. She looked helplessly at him with her eyes of dull brown, and smiled at that. Tonight is a good night. She stepped onto the creaking wooden planks of the bridge, the baby safely in her arms, and she slowly slipped on her rosary. She loved children, she loved all her children. She loved this baby. She loved the other children who were not hers in the house. She loved the ladies of the court. She loved her dead mother. She loved her dead father. She loved her faith. She loved her dear merciless God. With intense anger dwelling in her dying heart, she repressed the idea of love when she thought of him. No, she hated him. She despised him. That man should have died instead of her children. She should have killed him instead of her children. She stood over the bridge, the glimmer of black and blue had veiled through the night, the beautiful night. She saw the running waters of the river through the hedges of the strong overriding bridge. She smelled the baby's scent. She thought of the roses, her namesake, back at the pink rose gardens of the house she could not call home. If she would see that pink again, she would die with that color of pink. But she did not wear pink, she did not wear any of the beautiful colors of white and yellow. She grasped the hand with the rosary over her bosom, concealing her heart. Concealing her blood and life. She remembered that pink. She would always remember the roses. And the moment when she threw the baby into the river. A week later, he shoved the last of the luggage in the upper compartments, snapping shut on the metal clasps of the hard wooden shelves. Naruto bit his lip eagerly when he watched his male teammate do that. Sure, he did just enough, but it was always fun to watch Sasuke-chan struggle with so much weight all at once. Sure, it was tiring for the Uchiha bastard, but even more tiring for him to speculate the mistakes he made. The blonde leaned the wall board next to the sliding glass door, while he was eating his oh-so-precious ramen bowl with the hot water he ordered from that nice lady at the end of the train. He ripped off the tube and smacked his lips when the waft of shrimp and instant miso came into his comical round nostrils. Ah, I miss ramen. Naruto cracked open a pair of splintery chopsticks, washing them within the palms of his hands. Itadakimasu, he chirped, digging in already. The female watched, from across the train compartment, with an exhilarated sigh, clapping her knees on her knees boringly. She really hated the school uniform. She didn't like wearing so much black and white all the time. It reminded her too much of a personal newspaper, on the front page of a candid shot of the day. Sakura scrunk, head in her seat next to the window when Sasuke stepped off the bench after pushing their heavy suitcases together in the upper shelves. There, he grumbled, a little nasty that the blonde didn't help at all. We still have enough room to stuff the doby in. Hey, I resent that, Naruto exclaimed, the spittle of instant miss soup stained his mouth. I actually did help, but I didn't want to Becca. You were doing such a great job already. I had to pack in your 2 luggage bags full of instant ramen with the rest of your other suitcases, Sasuke muttered angrily. I'm just curious whether or not you bought your clothes. Naruto grinned, and began to fire back at Sasuke. While the boys were busy bickering at one another like little children over toys and candy, their lone female companion stared aimlessly at the window. She saw passing fields of green pastures and blue-tinted mountains behind the moist fogged glass pane, with escalating gray skies. A flock of dark birds spread lengthy wings soared over the foggy sky in a shape of an arrow. She leaned in close, to create a breathy fog on the pane. It was a cold and gloomy day, the goosebumps had brushed over her paling skin as she squeezed the warm cloak around herself. The train was already moving at a quick pace, she felt the seat was quivering slightly that drove to chatter her teeth slightly. She had ridden on a train a few times before, but this one. It was different. Sakura, tell him I'm right. Oh, shut up. Somehow, it was just eerie. Hey, you okay? She felt like something was going to happen. Hello, Earth to Sakura. Achoo. Quote, would you please be quiet, B. I can't concentrate. Darn cold got into my nose, you got a hanky. PFF'd, here, a handkerchief was held in a gloved hand. Either that or someone's talking about you. The speech the heady boy was giving was quite long and boring, some parts repeated over and over again until the words were buried in his head that drove him crazy. He glanced at the foggy window, just dreaming of flying on his broom. But his daydreams went away when every short moment, the brunette had to poke him to return to reality. He was literally going crazy. His hands were shaking from the cold even when the heaters were full blast. He stood next to Hermione and his sister, who was also appointed a prefect. He remembered when his mother told the Mickey when she heard the good news, and had bought her daughter several new school books and a new lavender dress gown. The red and gold badge on her black cloak was glimmering. Ginny looked absolutely flushed when she was standing with the crowd of prefects in a compartment with tables of butterbeer and cauldron cakes. Through his hazel eyes, from the long itchy red bangs, a tall towering figure stood before him. He wasn't really paying attention, since he was nearly falling asleep. What were in his mum's eggs? His stomach was kind of fuzzy now, he rubbed consciously. Something nudged at his arm. What? He growled quietly at the bushy-haired girl next to him. Then he sensed irritation a short distance away. Oh, wait, the head boy's about to say something. So I would need you, Ron, and you, Hermione. The gestures of his index and middle finger passed over at the two prefects. I putting the two of you in charge of the new students on this express, I would need you guys to escort them to Professor Dumbledore before the feast and to report back to the Great Hall. Is that clear? Wait a minute, who are these new students I'd been hearing so much about? Padma asked, leaning against the opposite wall. Everyone seemed to be whispering non-stop about them. Ah, of course, the head boy clapped his hands together. Professor McGonagall has informed me that we will be needing to know about this sort of gossip. Per se, the transfer students are 3 Oriental blokes from Japan. They come another magical school called Kanawa Foundation of Mimicking Katra. Actually, it's Konoha Institute of Magical Chakra, Hermione corrected. I had a talk with one of them before we boarded. Yes, he coughed, adjusting his voice quickly. Thank you, Hermione, he cooed. Ickley pulled out a parchment from his cloak pocket, unrolling it to read the fine handwriting. Their names are Sasuke Uchiha, Sakura Haruno, and Naruto Uzumaki. The coach has told me that they are seated in compartment 23. In the second cart. It's our jobs as prefects, and head boy and girl, that we would be responsible in making them feel comfortable in the Hogwarts atmosphere, since they are taking an entire year off their regular schooling schedule. Head girl intervened, counting off her fingers. That would mean tour trips, friendly talks, a bunch of cuppas, assuring they are safe, and 1 or 2 escorting them around Hogsmeade Village. Everyone else groaned. Hey, head boy exclaimed, we all have to do it. These kids mean something to Dumbledore, and we must understand that. But since we all don't want to do it, we're leaving the jobs to Ron and Hermione. What? Ron cried, but everyone ignored him. Hermione looked shocked. Well, you two seem to know more about them than we do. Head girl explained in a soothing voice, I'm sure you can handle it. Besides, more than 2/3 of this compartment have either NEWTs and OWLs exams or social lives. I have a life. Ron barked. You guys are just slackers. And what? You're not, Weasel King. Malfoy smirked. Several prefects had to grab hold of the redhead. I don't really understand, Hermione whispered. Ginny raised her hand. I volunteer to help. I mean, I think I know who they are. The younger Weasley looked embarrassed when everyone nodded. But that didn't really answer the last question, another prefect remarked, quite annoyed. Who are they? How are we supposed to find them if we don't even know who they are? Ginny felt a little sympathetic for the head boy who was fumbling with the hidden dozen parchments in his cloak. I actually never met them before. Hermione, you talked with one of them, right? How do we know which are the transfer students? The girl looked uncomfortable. Well, you see, they look a whole lot different from everyone else. What do you mean? Well, Hermione coughed nervously when all eyes were trained on her. The boy named Sasuke is a boy with blue-black hair and really, black eyes. He's quite pale. And she looked even more unstable, really handsome. Ron rolled his eyes. That really got the female prefect's attention. But Pansy snickered, disbelievingly. She whispered to her fellow Slytherins, if the squirrel says he is, he's not. They grinned and chuckled. Hermione pretended not to hear her. He's the tallest out of the 3, and I know. He doesn't like to talk to anyone. It's true, Ron whispered, he could probably pass for a mute. Hannah giggled. The person named Naruto is a boy with blonde hair. Hermione chuckled slightly, really blonde hair. Nearly bright yellow, he has the brightest blue eyes I had ever seen, and 3 whisker birthmarks on each cheek. And he's pretty, loud, and likes ramen. She smirked at the thought. When they were having Sundays in Fortescue's. The guy's a living human hose, if you get my drift, Ron snorted. One of the 5th years looked confused. I didn't think the Japanese can have blonde hair and blue eyes. I know, but these people are different, Hermione murmured. Actually, the weirdest I've seen so far is this girl, named Sakura. She's hot. Ron grinned, causing the males burst into laughs. Really? Anthony smirked. How pretty is she? Hogwarts don't make that kind of girl. Oh, I can't wait to meet her then, a seventh-year prefect laughed. Ernie was pink in the face. As he tried to pick himself up with a prideful face. The head boy had nearly forgotten about his important position, while the Slytherins were trying to fix their face into disinterest. Ron began an entire conversation with the guys while the female population in the prefect compartment looked less impressed. His best friend glared deadly at him. Ron looked startled. Sorry, go on. I suppose she is. Hermione said venomously, her eyes were burning. Her next words were rapid. She's quite tall but shorter than the boys, she has long hair and green eyes. And he's probably the most noticeable out of every one of them. Her hair is pink, natural not dyed, can you believe that? She's smart, she's gorgeous, she's quite the girl. After she finished her sentence, drawing out every word in hastily angered sentences, nearly breathing volcanic fire as the prefects cringed at her temper. Ron was just standing there with his jaw hanging loose for a couple of seconds before he closed his lips. Hermione looked flustered and tried cleaning herself off from any tantrum, but she was still pissed at him for being a disgusting jerk. Peesh, how can any person have pink hair? If not dyed, Malfoy scoffed. They just can, okay. Hermione snapped, making him taken aback. Whoa, slow down, head girl said, patting her on the back. Don't worry, boys are just stupid. Hey, head boy cried, with all the other males. Well, it's true, the head girl remarked nastily. Look, why are you still angry at me for? What happened at the Yule Ball 2 blasted years ago was not my fault. Oh, sure, like you were just born with two faces. Hey, that was uncalled for. Even when the meeting ended 25 minutes later, Ron could still feel the waft of irritancy directed from the same girl. Hand me the wires. Say, please. I'm not going say, please, just give me the wires. He stared at his plastic wristwatch he had got for his birthday, from his aunt and uncle. Which had only worked time to time. According to the fast rewinding black hand soaring through the numbers and dots, with the seconds hand ticking back and forth on the same millisecond. And if the weather was still good, he had about 11 hours before the train would arrive at the Hogwarts station. Wait, that didn't sound right. The teenager groaned and just snatched off the watch from his shivering hand. Quickly stuffing it with his wand before he looked to his right and left. He had absolutely nothing to do since his seating mates, Hedwig napping in her cage, Pig was twittering cutely in his own. And Neville Longbottom was fast asleep and snoring against the window, from doing last-minute transfiguration assignments. The book on his lap slipped off and thudded against the carpet floor unpleasantly. The closed bottle of ink and quill jumped slightly on the window pane. The images of trees and fences had passed by quickly. Harry was officially bored. He knew Hermione and Ron were busy in their perfect meetings, but somehow it had taken longer than usual to finish. He stood up from his seat and snuck away from his compartment, gently closing the sliding door before he walked down the hallway to get something to eat. With a little trim there and a cut, there we go. As the bomb set. Yes, all we need to do now is to activate it. Hey, guys. Sakura looked uncomfortable when she looked out of the window. Yeah, I think I see smoke on that bridge, she trembled, and I think we're headed for it. Elsewhere and somewhere. Are you ready to read yet, you retard? Oh, really? Are you sure? Aren't you scared? No. Well, okay, then. Go on. Elsewhere. By the time the smoke had risen to the atmosphere, unknown to the people or creatures anywhere. Up on a skinny yet strong tree holding up a tough tree branch laid a small homely nest. A mother bird nuzzled against her young while flapping her wings from her daily flights. In her beak was a tasty morsel of a struggling beetle. She made to lean down to her fuzzy children, each three heads bobbed up and down eagerly. Suddenly she poked her head out, her beady eyes glimmering underneath the shaded green and gray sky of cold September the 1st. She steadied herself very, very still, ignoring the baby's hungry chirping. There was a fast rustling in the distance, coming closer and closer. The heartbeats of the birds rapidly increased. As if on track, the beetle fell from her mouth and the bug was sent straight down into the thick clearing before the mother, too frightened for her own safety, had flown away, leaving the baby birds The rustle, the flash of 4 black figures had stampeded across the same tall branch and heartlessly, unknowingly kicked over the nest. Body really wanted to know about what happened to the baby birds. 2 lanky members walked towards the large covering of bushes and trees, pushing away the leaves and twigs. A fairly good-looking Ma. Dressed in black turned back to a dark shadow, running his clean fingers through his nice hair with an exaggerated sigh. The other team is just across from us, over that bridge. I still don't know why they prefer that section. You can be easily caught there. He rolled his pretty boy eyes. I don't understand those wizards still. They use that hocus-pocus crap. They can easily disguise themselves. His rather uglier subordinate muttered, folding out a long retractable telescope and fixed the lens. They need a good range of disarming several of the magic resources around the train tracks. Right. True. Another long sigh. He looked up into the tallest tree. Hey, Junior. How's the connection up there? Terrible. The last shortest figure appeared and seated promptly on the same branch with his legs crossed. The laptop on his thighs while the annoying taps of keys sent straight down into the clearing. The metal plate around his neck gleamed, shining. How far are we from the bridge? A low, manipulating voice gritted from below. We are exactly 50 yards away, a safe distance. A man-boy voice was heard. The boyish face looked up. His pale eyes were magnified by his specs. He nestled on the tree branch while trying to pick good reception. He gritted his teeth in impatience. Fuck, this keeps slowing down. You have to be aware that we're in the mountain forests. The old teenager hesitated before nodding affirmatively, his slender fingers gliding hastily over the black keys. The lightened monitor screen had transformed his face and clothes in a fluorescent light blue and gray. The scenes of letters and numbers, with lines and computer windows had played on the double lens of his glasses perched on his nose bridge. Sir, I have crossed paths with the corporation's radars. The consistent tapping of the keyboard had stopped. The smallest youngest man, wearing a black ski cap and a pair of thick oval bifocals, looked up with a smug look. I had scratch. Everything off their digital transmitting map. Password codes have been changed and the lower communication the 2 trainees have is restricted to only one of their private army services. Good, just as the big bird had wanted. A giant figure appeared from the shadows with his leather-gloved hands in his periwinkle gray vest pockets, his mouth chewed on a stick of gum. He dropped the crinkled, bright yellow wrapper on the thick mossy clearing from inside his pouches, before he walked over to 2 other who were leaning against the thick bushes and rock hedges. From the hidden hedges, they had an eye-to-eye with the faraway long bridge. It was a magnificent stone bridge, long and trailing with the old tracks. The river was below it, the bridge shadowed the glimmering waters and the clear pebbles. The forests came from their side down the long slopes, right into the waters. The 3 men looking over the section smiled wickedly. One man with an eye patch looked back at the gum-smacking fellow. The express is coming closer to its destination, sir, he whispered in a slippery voice from his crusty lips, kneeling against the boulder with a small telescope pressed against his good eye. Carrying the so-called mercenaries the foolish man had hired. The taller burlier man stood behind the crouched male, with a smirk. Good, right on schedule. And the Mark Zounds tykes. Oh, sir, they're still playing around with their fakes, another chuckled, swiping his handsome hair from his face. Excellent, the leader whispered gleefully, then the genocide of the bird filth begins. Snickers went all around the 4 shinobis. Inside Hogwarts Express. Sasuke, what the hell do you think you're doing? The blonde cried, when the raven-haired shinobi threw open the window. Asuke's head bobbed out of the blowing wind, his long bangs took a full of strong breezes and dust. He narrowed his eyes slightly, seeing the rise of pale smoke in the distance. The train jumped slightly on the tracks. Wild trees and foggy mist passed by, nearly creating a wintry scene. Sakura was hurriedly putting on her emergency ninja gear, quickly dispatching her black school cloak and loosening the tie around her collar. Her long pink hair was literally flying to her face, making her stumble over the spilt ramen and push Naruto aside. She reached into the upper cabinets, pulling out a small velvet suitcase and peeling off the thin explosive trigger tag by the pieces, hurriedly picking up several necessities before snapping the luggage shut. Naruto, here, Sasuke, catch. she hassle. Y threw the weaponry back pouches to the boys who caught them effortlessly. We need to get out of here. Wait, Sakura-chan. The kunoichi dashed out of the doorway, pulling the blonde with her by the wrist. Come on Naruto. We need to inform the coach. Sakura slid into the narrow hallways, creating a clabber of noise while neighboring compartment sharers looked out of their windows with confused stunned looks. Naruto looked back for the other companion, seeing that the train was coming into a very short tunnel with the smell of steam washing into the open pane. He watched as the upcoming darkness took over his form and Sasuke's, covering the entire insides of the train. The flailing skylights shook against each other. Suddenly when the darkness was gone, so was Sasuke. He flew right out of the window. Naruto. Sakura shouted for him, her skirt twist around her legs like a twirling umbrella when she looked back for him. Coming. He shook away his thoughts and uncertainty, running after Sakura when they kept hitting into people and things. His black cloak blew right behind him as he trudged quickly across the carpeted hallway. Get back into your compartments now. Sakura demanded at a group of frightened passing third-year girls. This is absolutely no time for useless gossip. Go, move it. What is the meaning of this? An auburn curly-haired girl ordered angrily. Soon she was shoved away. Hey, don't push a girl. Sorry babe. Naruto cried back, in his own form of apology. Shit. What part of, get the hell out of my way, don't you people understand? He frustratingly shouted. When concerned school kids walked out of their rooms. More and more people came out. The shinobis cursed their stupidity. What's going on? What's the matter here? Hey, don't push. Sorry. The pink-haired girl shrieked when she was nearly swallowed by everyone else. Please, everyone. You have to get back into your compartments now. Why? Yeah, you're not a prefect. What's going on? She was frantic. To do anything, something, please. Calm down. We need everyone to get back in. Some listened, some were jerks and were pestering her. Sakura. There are too many in the way. Naruto cried when a blockage of other years had thrown open their sliding doors, staring at him and the commotion ringing outside. We can't get to the coach in time, we have to do something. I know, she shouted, shoving people away. Inner Sakura, think woman. What would Kakashi do? He's not even here, she cried to herself, scaring a few. She hastily twisted around, letting all her hair fly into people's faces. Look. Naruto, I need you to get everyone into their compartments. This is a critical lockdown. I have to stop the train. His blue eyes were a distance away. Stop it. What can you do? I don't know. I'll think of something. You better. I can't hold them off. Ow. Son of a bitch. Naruto pushed someone into another compartment, closing the door immediately. That's my foot. Sakura couldn't think twice anymore, and quickly burst through someone's door. She couldn't even see the shocked faces of those inside, when she repeated Sasuke's plan by throwing open another window and stepped onto the ledge, where she disappeared instantly away. In a full velocity, she shot off to grab hold of the metal bars and attaching her chakra against the steel. She skidded against the metal, easing to the safe side. Hesitantly biting her lip, she climbed up, heaving herself in one convulsionating thrust of her strong arms and flew up to the top. The wind and smoke mingled into a choking sensation, having two people wrench the windows shut. The students screamed and they were running amok. What the fuck is going on? Oh my god. She jumped. We're doomed. Doomed. Oh goddamn it, Naruto cursed, crossing his fingers into a very familiar sign. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Nightingale Bridge. Wait Dami, don't pull that yet. I have orders too. Don't. Dominique, listen to me. A roll of his eyes. What is it now, Beatrice? You need another hanky. What? No. Don't you hear that? No. Hear what? That noise. What noise? That noise coming from that tunnel over there. B. There's no noise coming from that T. Why is it that you always follow your instincts? His gloved fingers inched back to his job. She shrieked. No. Don't pull that last one yet. He let out an aggravated growl, almost dispatching the trigger. B. I have direct orders too. She squealed, slapping a hand over her red Lee. P.S. and using her free arm to bring up a pair of binoculars. Is that a train coming? What? Disbelief was etched into his voice. No, that's impossible. The monitor showed no sense of any incoming transportations. Outside Hogwarts Express, he connected the foots of his chakra against the smooth cold plates of iron black metal, quickly dashing forward across the tops of the gigantic monster. Train as he quickly ran over to the coach's engine board, his arms flailing behind him as he skidded through the strong winds of the bull blasting of the train chugging. His beautiful dark hair flew from his face, like a full blast of air conditioner in his narrowed onyx eyes. His black cloak acted like a heavy cape, while the tied strands held together just long enough for him to nearly collide against the flying kunoichi. Her body just soared off from the windows, her hair and skirt lifted off with the wind as they slammed into each other. Their molded chakra around their solid feet held tightly. Sasuke clumsily caught her when her forehead smacked against his own. "Hey," she squealed, rubbing her injured face. "What?" he cried very loudly. "I said, hey," she yelled back. "Oh, bah, Sakura," he snarled impatiently. His eyes began to water when the smoke from the pipe was gliding against his cheeks and blocking his vision. "What are you doing here? You're supposed to be helping Naruto." I know, okay." Sakura coughed drastically into her sleeve. The risky maneuver had nearly knocked the wind out of her, but I couldn't get through the kids. And I didn't want to hurt any of them. But they were all over Naruto and I just can't get through fast enough. "Oh yeah, sure. And this is how you waste time," Sasuke barked, shedding his eyes immediately with his clasped hand. "Your hair is in my face. And you're wearing a skirt, for crying out loud." Her face was bright red from utter embarrassment, as she folded her hands down on the long blowing fabric. "Well, this is what kunoichis have to deal with in certain situations. Inside Hogwarts Express. Don't push me, you piece of slam. Hey, that's closed. What's the matter with why? Locked. Come on. Move it. Come on." The many multiple Narutos quickly pushed everyone into their places, twisting handles that locked them in. Even shoving the old witch who pushed the lunch trolley on the Press into a room with a couple of 7th years. People from behind glass windows opened their mouths and shouted through the inner soundproof glass. The shadow clones winked at them before they disappeared into wandering spoofs of smoke. There were only 3 left in the hallways. The real Naruto wiped sweat from his brow. "Phew. Got everyone in. Hey, Naruto, is that you?" The 3 Narutos snapped their nervous heads at the upcoming form. A form with glasses and the hair disaster. Harry lowered his waving arm when he saw something very, very strange. "Why are there 3 of you?" "EKKK. The Narutos squealed like little girls, clobbering the poor fool in a heap. 2 were holding his arms with their hands over his mouth and underneath his askew glasses. The real one frisked through his own sunshine hair. "Ah. Sakura-chan's going to kill me. Why does it always have to be you in the way?" Harry shouted and struggled underneath the heavy strong arms, crushing their twin forms against his own lanky one. His ruffled hair was scuffled and tweaked, while he stubbornly tried his best to breathe, and he cringed when they brought him down on the thin hard floor, weakly and hastily tying up his feet and arms. A blindfold crushed over his pupils while he yelled. Something unpleasant tasting stuffed into his spasm mouth. The 2 clones disappeared instantly into smoke. Naruto knelt over the struggling wizard with an inner tantrum. The blonde looked highly exhilarated. "Oh god, what's next? Hey Naruto, we heard some noise and, what are you doing to Harry?" Ron and Hermione ran over with their wands. Naruto groaned, slapping his forehead. "Oh man, didn't see that one coming." Somewhere, there was a low snicker came behind a bunch of bushes, a wand poked out. "ISTI. Can't believe he wants his own fucking kids doing this." Yes, the other dark figure looked over into the hedges, walked further into the forest grounds. "Just kill them too." The bearded smirk widened. "Aight." He waved his wand. "Nightingale Bridge. Shit, that wasn't supposed to happen," he growled, snapping the laptop shut and tapping into the wireless connection around his collar. The young woman, hanging on the tight black ropes under him, stared consciously at him. Her ruddy short hair was in the cold air. The taller figure was away contacting someone, anyone. Dominique Mark Zounds to Carver Sunny. "Hey. We got a problem here, over." "What's the problem, over?" I don't know exactly, but there's a train coming on the tracks in the distance of 300 yards, over. What? You're jesting, right? Over. The male scoffed, rubbing the speaker with a snarl. Look, I'm not joking, okay? I need the immediate data on the Nightingale property. I can't find a single scratch of evidence of a train coming in my monitor. Over. You know what this means, huh? He's going to hate you, Beatrice muttered. The other man frowned slightly then smiled. The woman, who always acted on her instincts, widened her eyes. No, you wouldn't. Dummy. Hey, Carver, I think we would have to abort. He found pleasure in his sister's shocked look. Over. There was a rough struggle in his voice. Are you sure about aborting? Over. Well, yes, of course. Over. Fine. Roger, that then. Transmission over. See. Nothing to worry about. Dominique then laughed carelessly, tilting his glasses. I can't believe we're ditching, she whispered. I thought that wasn't our style. You know the consequences, he replied back, his index finger covered over the speaker. We have to abort if we are endangering any other man on the bridge. Everyone is on the corporation's ass because of the disappearance of Lady Rose Boudica Zounds and her baby. The news these days aren't that great anymore. Didn't you hear about that mysterious explosion elsewhere and that murder in Little Hang? What are you talking about? Beatrice whispered, her eyes were against the lens. The train's not stopping, we have to. A sudden slide of the fractioning ropes dropped down to her level. The man leaned against the hard stone ledge and stared down on the younger figure. We're at a safe distance. Quit worrying. Dummy, we're attaching explosives to a bridge. Her dark eyes glanced out of the binoculars. I have everything to worry about. Another laugh rung in the cold mist. Women these days. I am your sister. Beatrice barked. The train's coming closer and closer. And look, we'll just let them pass by and then we'll activate the explosives later. But Carver will be able to shut down the triggers, okay? Nothing, absolutely nothing to worry about. Then, that Sonny better hurry, the woman muttered nervously, her binoculars against her yellow-tinted goggles. The train's coming in 150 yards. It's either filled with people or not. It would be a massacre if the explosion went on. And I'm not dying like some fucking pagan because of this glitch in the radar, got it? Quote. Shish, his index finger was pressed against his lips. Don't worry, we will get to blow up something soon enough. Outside Hogwarts Express. So this is what I get for not distributing the plan first. He exclaimed tempered. The sounds of the train was too loud for them to be in a normal conversation as they screamed at each other back and forth. What? WHO made you the alpha? Sakura cried, her hands on her hips. Right now, I have to stop the train somehow. What can you do? Sasuke barked. What can you do? Before the raven-haired shinobi could retort, something burst out of a window with a screeching cry. Something with shockingly bright yellow hair and electric blue eyes. That same something flew over to the top of the train and ran as quickly as possible. His heavy black cloak was shooting off at his speed that had almost created a godlike feature as he darted forth to the two ninjas with a huge aspirated expression. That something slid across the cold metal, coughing and wheezing at the smoke from the huge pipe from the front coach section, as the train jittered and chugged on with power. Sasuke and Sakura caught him with their arms, supporting him while he grinned foxily. Guys, I have a plan. Naruto smiled. He looked positively beat up, since his clothes seemed zinged and dusty. Nani? They cried. His last words were drowned out by the train. Guys. Naruto cupped his hands around his mouth, sounding like a megaphone. I have a plan. Not that loud. We can still hear you. Sasuke yelled, smacking him over the head harshly. Ow. Sorry. I thought you were supposed to getting everyone in a lockdown. Sakura demanded loudly, jabbing him on the chest. Naruto stuck his pinky finger in his right ear, wincing. I was. But, Mion and Ron backtracked me. Who the hell is Mion? Sakura yelled. It's Hermione's nickname. The chugging was quicker and rougher than usual, causing them to scream louder. What? Hermione's nickname. What? Hermione's nickname. What? Herm. Sasuke smacked his flaxen head. His now red eyes were glittering into intimidation. We're losing precious time. What is your fucking plan? What do you mean, closing my bedtime? My fucking plan. Naruto looked a little in disarray, then he grinned, stopping the train of course. How? His teammates screamed. Nightingale Bridge. This is Carver Sonny to Dominique Mark Zounds. Are you sure about aborting? Over. He fluttered his eyes, affirmative. It's too dangerous now, we'll just have to let the train pass. But, you do know that one of the major bombs had already been activated, right? Over. What? That's impossible. Dominique dropped his jaw, Beatrice's eyes widened. No, I didn't touch anything. Wait, hold up, Carver. The exasperated woman carried a pair of binoculars against her eyes. The train is 200 yards away, going in about. There was a tense struggle in the man's voice. He's not going to like this. Over. Right. Transmission over. He shut off the speaker button and glanced down on a head of red golden hair. Thank you for watching.